October, everybody. So I'm sitting here in my living room just, fiddling around with an idea that I randomly had a little while ago. And since it's October, I thought I'd add it to my list of theories and brilliant brainstorms. It's not technically a theory per se, but it's a question that I'm going to put under the category. So, and since it's October, I thought it would be fun because it's a Halloween-related question or theory, whatever you want to call it. And if you want to see more of things like that, me talking about like October, like things like Halloween movies and stuff like that, let me know right down in the comments and I'll make more because I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. So, the question or the random theory I had today, or I had a couple days ago, me and my mom were randomly going shopping out one day, and we happened to be talking about one of what I think is probably one of the best Halloween movies of all time, or at least animated Halloween movies of all time, is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, we happen to be talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I randomly had a thought when talking about Sally, the character of Sally. Now, if you've been living under a rock for the last, 25 plus years, I'm going to give you a quick rundown and spoiler of The Nightmare Before Christmas, just in case you haven't seen it. The Nightmare Before Christmas is about a skeleton named Jack who gets bored or tired of his job as, the main scarer of his, Halloween town. So he goes on an adventure, and he discovers a new holiday called Christmas, and he wants to take it for his own. And, and he ends up making it more like Halloween versus what Christmas is supposed to be. And so he has kind of an identity crisis, and he learns, the value of, hey, what he does is important, and that's okay, and, don't mess with other people's, stuff. And during this adventure, we have his friend, Sally, who we all know, obviously, she secretly has a crush on him. And she's, trying to warn him, saying that taking over the holiday is obviously a bad idea. And, but obviously he doesn't listen until the very end. And then, he has to save her from the bad guy. His name is Oogie Boogie, her and Santa. And then so Santa comes back and saves Christmas, and then they go their separate way. But then Sally and him end up together happy. So, when it comes to the character of Sally, so with the thing that Halloween Town is that we're all creatures of, the undead, or Halloween, as the name would imply, of Halloween Town, live there. So there's monsters, there's monsters. Jack is the only skeleton, which might be a theory for another day, but Jack is the only skeleton, but, we have monsters, vampires, we have a creature from the Black Lagoon, we have ghosts, we have a whole bunch of stuff going on, a whole bunch of nasty and creepy, yay. Sally is kind of a question mark to me. Now, when we first meet Sally, we are, or at least you're led to believe that she's kind of framed after Frankenstein's monster, that she, because she's all, sewn up and she's made up of, different things. She's obviously, she's made by this scientist who is not Frankenstein, but obviously the comparison is there. So you're supposed to believe, okay, like Frankenstein's monster, she's a bunch of, dead people sewn up together and brought to life. But that's not necessarily true, I happened to think the other day. Now, you believe this just because, there's other monsters that are framed after famous monsters already. So you just think, okay, they're framing after Frankenstein's monster. But I don't think that's what they're doing. Because when you really do the math and you actually analyze certain things, you'll learn that that's not the case. That she's actually not like Frankenstein's monster. At least I don't think so. Because here's the main thing, is that Frankenstein's monster, not to be gross, is made up of dead people. Sally isn't made up of dead people. And the reason I know this is because there's a scene in the movie where she wants to go and see Jack, but she's grounded and she's locked up in her room by the scientist that made her. And she jumps out the window and she breaks apart. Now, when she breaks apart, you'll notice she doesn't have any, like, bones and guts and, like, things that would make up a person. She's, like, stuffed with, like, leaves and twigs and, like, fabric and, like, things like that. So she's not, like Frankenstein, where she's a person, or different people, like, at least, like, you're led to believe. So... And I feel like I remember when I was little, I remember hearing about this from the directors or the writers of the movie. I could be completely remembering, but I heard that the reason they did this, like why she's stuffed with like leaves and stuff instead of bones and like normal things, is because they thought it would be too gory and too scary for children. After all, it is a children's movie. So if you saw a girl jump out the window and then her arm breaks off and it's literal blood and guts, that's not safe and family friendly. So they did it with leaves and stuff. Now, that aside, making it family friendly, that's fine, that's great. You want it to be family friendly, so you can watch it with your kids. But that leads me to the question, what is she then? If she's not made up of people, is she like a doll? Like a rag doll? Because, she's dressed like a rag doll and she's still stitched up together like a rag doll. But then what makes her move? Like, what makes her operate? Like, does she have organs? Like, what's the makeup here? Because something to bring up is that the doctor who made Sally makes another person, I guess you could call her, he calls her Jewel. He makes another woman. He makes himself a wife. And when he's making her in the movie, you can see he gives her half of his brain. So that, quote unquote, they could have intellectual conversations. So, and obviously Sally isn't stupid. So, does she have a brain? And obviously she also has emotions because she loves Jack and wants to be outside in the whole kind of Disney princess but gory version. So, does she have like I said, does she have organs? Does she have like a brain, heart, lungs? Or is she just like an inanimate object brought to life? Like, what's her like mode, or what's her makeup, or what what is she and how does she work, I guess is my question. Like, I know it's probably overanalyzing too much, because then once you overanalyze, you're not going to be able to be like, able to see the happy in it, like her and Jack do end up together. And it's not that I'm not happy, but I just do question that, like, what is, because the doctor makes other things, and it seems like they do have somewhat parts that are actual, like, either people or parts that are actual, like, that exist, like, that are actually parts of living things. Because she makes Jewel, and he makes Jack's bone reindeer, when he wants to pull the sleigh, when he wants to take place of Santa Claus, he makes, like, reindeer out of, like, skeletons. And the skeletons come to life. But they're, like, they're skeletons. Them, too. They don't have organs, they don't have brains, he brings them to life, kind of similar to Frankenstein, through electricity. So is that what he did to Sally? Like, through enough electricity, he just charged her? Like, when you charge an inanimate object, like, what's the, unless you're supposed to believe through the magic of, like, oh, I really want this to happen, it just does, because that happens in a lot of movies too. When you, like, wish for something so hard, it becomes real. But obviously that's kind of, to me, that's a little bit too, like, fluffy? If that makes sense. Like, it's too soft. It's too, like, oh, happy ending. Not that the movie doesn't have a happy ending, but it's too, like, princessy in a way. It's too, like, I don't know. It just doesn't fit this movie's narrative. So, I leave the question to you. What do you, when you watch The Nightmare Before Christmas, what do you see Sally as? Do you see her as a living doll? Do you see her as like Frankenstein's a monster, but instead of blood and guts, she's filled with leaves? Like, answer this question for me, but I leave it up to you. But it's just something I thought would be a lot of fun to just discuss. But that's just me. But I'll leave it to you guys, and I'd love to see what you guys, write down in the comments. But that wraps up this video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!